Welcome all to the course 19EE 409T Smart Grids and Electric Vehicles. My name is Harish and we are moving towards almost towards the end of the course where we would be discussing on electric propulsion systems for electric and hybrid electric vehicles. Up till now, we looked over the differences between electric vehicles and conventional vehicles. Then we looked into the architecture of designing an EV, introduced ourselves to the concept of hybrid electric vehicles, and discussed different configurations and classifications of the same. We concentrated on series and parallel configurations of electric vehicles and detailed analysis of the designs were conducted. In today's lecture, we shall look into electric propulsion systems, which are at the heart of electric vehicles and hybrid electric vehicles. The motor drives, electric motor drives for EVs and HEVs can be classified into two main groups, commutator motors and commutatorless motors. In this class, we will be looking towards we will discuss in detail the DC motor drives. And in the coming classes, we will look into the induction motor drives, permanent magnet brushless DC drives, and switched reluctance motor drives. See, the figure here shows functional block diagram of a typical electric propulsion system. See, the choice of electric propulsion systems for any EVs or HEVs mainly depend on several factors, but mainly on driver's expectation, the constraints of the vehicle, and the source of energy generation. See, first point, driver's expectation. Driver's expectation means defined by driving profile. Now, driving profile would include acceleration, maximum speed, climbing capability, braking, and range. Second point, the vehicle constraints. Vehicle constraints means the volume of it, weight of it, type of the vehicle weight, type of the vehicle, and the payload. Third point, source of energy generation. Energy source relates to batteries, fuel cells, ultra capacitors, flywheels, and so on and so forth, the other hybrid sources. Thus, the process of identifying the preferred feature and package options for electric propulsion must be carried out at the system level itself. The interaction of subsystems and the likely impacts of system trade-offs must be examined. Do mind this that unlike the industrial applications, compared to the industrial applications of electric motors, the electric motors used in EVs and HEVs usually require frequent starts and stops, high rates of acceleration, similarly high rates of deceleration, high torque, low speed hill climbing, low torque, and high speed cruising, and a very wide speed range of operation. Hence, there will always be a difference between an industrial electrical motor and a electric vehicle electric motor. Now, the figure here shows the classification of electric motor drives for EV and HEV applications. See, motor drives are classified as commutator and commutatorless drives. Commutator motors are mainly our traditional DC motors, which include series excited, shunt excited, compound excited, separately excited, and permanent magnet excited motors. DC motors need commutators and brushes to feed current into the armature, making the DC motors less reliable and unsuitable, not suitable for maintenance-free operation and high speed. In addition to this, the winding excited DC motors have low specific power density. Nevertheless, because of their mature technology and simple control, DC motor drives have prominent in electric propulsion systems. Technological developments have recently pushed commutator-less electric motors into a new era. Advantages such as higher efficiency, higher power density, and low operating cost are there. There are also more reliable and maintenance free compared to the commutator DC motors. Thus, the commutator-less electric motors have now become more attractive. Now, the very first point of a commutator-less DC motor, as you can see, commutator-less motor, sorry, not DC motor, commutator-less motor type, as you can see in the figure, is first type is induction motors. Now, induction motors are widely accepted, and these are very famously can be used very famously for EV and HEV propulsion applications. Why? This is because of induction motors' low cost, comparatively, high reliability, and maintenance free operation. However, conventional control of electric induction motors, such as variable voltage control, variable frequency control, cannot provide the desired performance. So, what nowadays we do? We use power electronics and microcomputers and develop the fee principle and work on the principle of FOC, field oriented control, or very famously called as vector control of induction motors. Now, such control, the FOC, field oriented control and vector control of induction motors, has been accepted to overcome their control complexity due to non-linearity. However, even using this FOC, the induction motor drives for EV and HEVs still suffer from low efficiency at lighter loads. And they also have a limited constant power operating range. So what is being done? We can replace the field winding of conventional synchronous motor, the field winding of conventional synchronous motor, if replaced with permanent magnets, we get a permanent magnet synchronous motor. A permanent magnet synchronous motor does not have conventional brushes, no slip rings, and hence no field copper losses. Such permanent magnet synchronous motors are called as very famously permanent magnet brushless AC motors or sinusoidal fed permanent magnet brushless motors. Why sinusoidal fed? Because their sinusoidal AC current and brushless configuration. If we abandon the field winding or permanent magnets, while purposely making use of the rotor's saliency, what we get? We get a synchronous reluctance motor. Synchronous reluctance motors are generally simple and inexpensive, but we will see this also, but they have relatively low output power. Similar to induction motors, these permanent magnet synchronous motors also use FOC, field oriented control, for high performance applications. Because of their inherently high power density and high efficiency, the permanent magnet synchronous motors have been widely accepted as having great potential to compete with induction motors for EV and HEV applications. Now, if we want to do further modification, if we virtually invert the stator and rotor of commutator permanent magnet DC motor, what we get? We get a permanent magnet brushless DC motor, PMBL-DC motors. Here, one point is to be noted that I am saying it is PMBL-DC motor, but the term DC may be misleading since it does not refer to a DC current motor. These motors are fed by regular AC current, rectangular AC current, and hence are also called as rectangular fed PM brushless motors. Of course, as you must have rightly pointed out till now that the most obvious advantage of such motors is the removal of brushes. SRMs, switched reluctance motors, have been recognized widely to have considerable potential for EV and HEV applications. Basically, they are direct derivatives of single stack variable reluctance stepping motors. They have SRMs, have definite advantages of very simple construction, low manufacturing cost, and a good torque speed characteristics for EV and HEV applications. Now let us move further and jump into the DC motor drives. DC motor drives have been widely used in applications requiring adjustable speed, good speed regulation, and frequent starting, braking, and reversing. Various DC motor drives have been widely applied to different electric traction applications because of their technological maturity and simplicity in control. See, the operating principle of a DC motor is pretty straightforward. You must have already studied this since your schooling days, but we will just have a revision, brush up look into it. Simple principle that when a wire carrying electric current is placed in a magnetic field, a magnetic force acts on the wire. The force is perpendicular to the wire and the magnetic field as is shown in the figure on the left side. This magnetic force F is proportional to the length of the wire L, magnitude of the electric current I, and the magnetic field density capital B. Hence the expression capital F is equal to B into I into L. When a wire is shaped into a coil as shown in the figure in the left side, not the animation is only to let you know what is happening when the wire is when the motor is rotating. When the wire is shaped into a coil, the magnetic forces acting on both sides produce a torque. This torque is expressed as capital T is equal to B into I into L into cos of alpha, where capital B is the magnetic field density, capital I is the magnitude of electric current, capital L is the length of the wire coil, and alpha is nothing but the angle between the plane of the coil and the magnetic field, as is clearly represented in the left side of the figure. The magnetic field may be produced by a set of windings also or permanent magnets. If the magnetic field is produced by a set of winding, then that DC motor is called as wound field DC motor. I repeat, if the magnetic field is produced, as you can see the N and S, if the magnetic field is produced by a set of windings, it is called as wound field DC motor. And if the magnetic field is produced by permanent magnet, it is simply called as permanent magnet DC motor. The coil which is rotating, which is carrying the electric current, is called as the armature. Practically, armature consists of several coils. To obtain continuous and maximum torque, slip rings and brushes are used to conduct each coil at a position of alpha equal to 0. Practically, the performance of DC motors is described by the armature voltage, back EMF, and field flux. Typically, there are 4 types of wound field DC motors. Depending on the classification depends on the mutual interconnection between the field and the armature windings. These are, first one is separately excited, as you can see in the right side first figure. Second is series excited, as you can see the right side second figure below the separately excited one. And you have shunt excited and compound excited. In the case of separately excited motor, the field and the armature voltage can be controlled independently of one another. In a shunt motor, the field and armature are connected in parallel to a common source. As you can see the second figure on the right side of separately excited figure, the equivalent circuit. So in shunt motor, what happens is an independent control of field or armature currents can only be achieved by inserting a resistance in the appropriate circuit. This is this is an inefficient method of control because you are bringing something else. The efficient method, what will be the efficient method? The efficient method is to use power electronics based DC-DC converters in the appropriate circuit to replace the resistance to reduce the I square R loss. The DC-DC converters can be actively controlled to produce proper armature and proper field voltage. If we look into the case of series motor, the field current is the same as the armature current because these are connected in series, both the armature as is seen and also the field. So the field flux is a function of armature current. Whereas if you look into the cumulative compound configuration, the last figure, you have two field windings as you can see. One is S1, S2, one is in shunt and one is F1, F2. In a cumulative compound motor, the magnetomotive force MMF of a series field is a function of the armature current and is in the same direction as the MMF of the shunt field. If we look into the steady state equivalent circuit of the armature of a DC motor, it looks like something like this. The resistance Ra is the resistance of the armature circuit. For a separately excited and shunt DC motors, it is equal to the resistance of armature windings. For series and compound motors, it is the sum of armature and series field winding resistance. As this is nothing but the same thing which I am saying, as we can see in the previous slide and the previous the figures in the previous slides. So if we apply the basic network theory equations over here, we can obtain the voltage equation, the basic equations as VA equal to the EMF plus RA into IA, where the EMF will be equal to KE times 5 omega m and the torque which is generated will be equal to KE times phi into IA. Phi is nothing but the flux per pole, usually represented in Webers. IA will be armature current in amperes, VA will be armature voltage in volts, RA will be the resistance of the armature circuit in ohms, omega m will be the speed of the armature in radian per second, and the torque developed by the motor will obviously be expressed in Newton meters. Now from these figures, what we can obtain is the expression from a torque in this manner. Do note that all these equations are applicable to all DC motors, namely separately or shunt excited, series and compound motors. In the case of separately excited motors, if the field voltage is maintained as constant, one can assume the flux to be practically constant as the torque is varying or the torque changes. In this case, the speed torque characteristic of a separately excited motor will be a straight line. Now the flux in case of series motor, the flux will be a function of armature current. As you can see, phi is equal to Kf into Ia. In an unsaturated region of the magnetization characteristic, phi is presumed proportional to Ia. And using these equations, we can get the expression of torque as this. Ra will now be the Ra, which is in the denominator expression, armature circuit resistance, will now be the sum of armature and field winding resistance. Hence, we'll get the torque speed characteristics for different types of motors like this. Let us look into the dotted line. First, the speed in series motor. In the case of a series configuration, any increase in torque is accompanied by an increase in armature current and therefore an increase in magnetic flux phi. Now, as phi is increasing with the torque, the speed will drop to maintain a balance between the induced voltage and the supply voltage. The characteristic, therefore, as shown in the dotted line, shows a dramatic drop. A motor of standard design works at the knee point of the magnetization curve at the rated torque. At heavy torque, which is the large current condition, overload, the magnetic circuit saturates and the speed torque approach, that curve approaches a straight line, as you can see. Series DC motors are suitable for applications requiring high starting torque and heavy torque overload such as traction. Let's say the locomotives, trains. This was just the case for electric traction before the power electronics and microcontroller era. However, series DC motors for traction application have some disadvantages. They are not allowed to operate without the load torque with full supply voltage. Otherwise, what will happen? Their speed will quickly increase up to a very large value, as you can see from the equations. Another disadvantage is the difficulty of regenerative braking. The speed torque characteristics are also for series excited and separately excited shunt motors are also shown. Now let us look into a method of control which is called as the combined armature voltage and field control. Why do we have this is because the independence of armature voltage VA and the field provides more flexible control of the speed and torque than other types of DC motors. Why we use this is because in EV and HEV applications, hybrid electric vehicle applications, the most desirable speed torque characteristic, again I repeat, for electric vehicle applications, the most desirable speed torque characteristic is to have a constant torque below a certain speed, which we recognize as base speed, and a constant power in a speed range above the base speed, as is shown in the figure. Again, I repeat, it is very important. The most desirable, that's what designers ask, right? That it is a very famous question. The most desirable speed torque characteristic for electric vehicle applications is to have a constant torque below a certain speed, which we recognize as a base speed, as is shown in the figure, and a constant power in a speed range above the base speed. So you have both armature control, voltage control below the base speed and field control as a constant power, but torque is varying above the base speed. See, what is happening is in a speed range lower than the base speed, the armature current and field are set at their rated values and hence they produce rated torque. From the equations which we have seen in the previous slide, it is clear that the armature voltage must be increased proportionally to the increase in speed. So what is happening? At the base speed, the armature voltage reaches its rated value, which is equal to the source voltage, and hence cannot be increased further. Now to further increase the speed, what we do? We weaken the field. The field must be weakened with the increase in speed. Then the back EMF and armature current constant is maintained. The torque produces drops parabolically with increase in speed and the output power hence remains constant above the base speed. Now we will look into all of this control you must have studied. We are just looking into more detail in aspect of EV and HEV applications. Chopper control of DC motors. The power electronic circuit and steady state voltage waveform for a DC motor drive can be shown like this. See, choppers are used for the control of DC motors because of their several advantages such as high efficiency, flexibility in control, lightweight, small size, they are quick in response and regeneration down to very low speed. At present, separately excited DC motors are usually used in traction due to the control flexibility of armature voltage and field. A DC voltage source, capital V, as you can see in the circuit diagram, left side top. What it does is it supplies an inductive load through a self-commutated semiconductor switch, capital S. The symbol of a self-commutated semiconductor switch has been used because a chopper can be built using any devices among thyristors with a forced commutation circuit. The force commutation circuit usually consists of a GTO, gate turn off, power transistor, MOSFET, and IGBT. The diode shows the direction in which the device can carry current, and a diode DF is connected in parallel with the load. The self-commutated semiconductor switch is operated periodically over a period capital T and remains closed for a time T on, which is equal to delta times T. As you can see from the graphs, in x-axis you have del T. This delta, of course, you have correctly pointed out, the value will be greater than 0 and less than 1. And hence this delta is nothing but the duty ratio or duty cycle of the chopper. Now if you can see from the waveform of the control signal, the second graph, IC is the control signal. The control signal is nothing but the base current for a transistor chopper and a gate current for a GTO of a GTO chopper, or the main thyristor for a thyristor chopper. If a power MOSFET is used, it will be a gate to source voltage. When a control signal is present, the semiconductor switch S will conduct if it is forward biased. It is assumed that the circuit operation has been arranged such that the removal of IC will turn off the switch. All of this, what I have just said now, is nothing but which you must have studied in your electronic devices and circuits course. During the on interval of the switch, that is when the time t is less than del t, greater than 0 of course, the load is subjected to a voltage capital V and the load current increases from IA1 to IA2, as you can see from the graph 3. The switch is opened at t equal to del t, and during the off period of the switch, that is from del t to capital 1, del t to 1, the load inductance maintains the flow of current through the diode DF. As you can see, that is connected in parallel to the load from the circuit diagram. The load terminal voltage stays 0 if the voltage drop on the diode is ignored in comparison to capital V, the source voltage, and the current decreases from IA2 to IA1. This interval is called as the duty interval, the interval from 0 to del t, and the interval from del t to capital T is called as the freewheeling interval because the diode DF is coming into the picture. And it provides a path for the load current to flow when the switch is off, and then thus improves the load current waveform. Furthermore, by maintaining the continuity of the load current at turn off, it prevents transient voltage from appearing across switch S due to sudden change of the load current. The source current waveform is also shown as IS, the last waveform. Of course, the source current flows only during the duty interval and is equal to the load current. With these waveforms, you can calculate the direct component or the average value of the load voltage, which will come as del times capital V. And by controlling del between 0 and 1, the load voltage is varied between 0 to capital V. There's a chopper, which is class A, this is called as class A chopper, allows a variable DC voltage to be obtained from a fixed DC source. The switch S, the self-commutated semiconductor switch S, can be controlled in various ways by varying the duty ratio, delta. The control technologies are divided into two categories. One is called as time ratio control, which is also called as the pulse width control. In time ratio control or pulse width control, the ratio of on time to chopper period is controlled. You can do this as a constant frequency or as variable frequency as well. The second control technology by which you can control the switch S is called as the current limit control, also called as point by point control. In current limit control or point by point control, del is controlled indirectly by controlling the load current between certain specified maximum and minimum values. This, as already pointed out, this is nothing but a class A chopper. It is one of the number of chopper circuits that are used for the control of DC motors, and hence very famously called as single quadrant chopper, because it provides only a positive voltage and only a positive current. If we look for class B chopper, the configuration is a little bit different. This chopper is called as class B chopper or step up chopper. The presence of control signal IC indicates the duration for which the switch can conduct a forward bias. During a chopping period T, this switch remains closed for an interval from 0 to delta T and remains open for an interval from delta T to T. That means during the on period, the source current IS increases from IS1 to IS2, thus increases the magnitude of the energy stored in the series inductance L. When the switch is opened, current flows through the parallel combination of the load and the capacitor. Since the current is forced against the higher voltage, the rate of change of current is negative. The di by dt is negative. It decreases from IS2 to IS1, hence that can be seen from the graph of source current. And the decrease is happening from IS2 to IS1, of course, from delta T when you have switched the switch up till capital T. This is the switch off period. The energy stored in the inductance at this point and the energy supplied by the low voltage source are then provided to the load. So what here capacitor is doing, it is serving two purposes. At the instant of opening of the switch S, the source current and the load current are not the same. Right? In the absence of capacitor, the turn off of the switch S forces the two currents to have the same value. Now when the two currents are having the same value, this will cause a very high induced voltage to be induced in the inductance and also the load inductance. Inductive load, we have considered inductive load. Another reason for using the capacitor is to reduce the load voltage ripple. The purpose of diode is to prevent any flow of current from the load into switch S or source V. Again, this is an exercise that I give all of you to calculate the average voltage across the terminals of the load by yourself. And when you calculate it, you will get to know that the output voltage is reducing and hence it is a step-up chopper. The output voltage is increasing and hence it is a step-up chopper. The output voltage is VA, the voltage across the load for class B chopper. The main advantage of a step-up chopper is the low ripple in source current. While most applications require a step-down chopper, the step-up chopper finds application in low-power battery-driven vehicles. Again, I repeat, the step-up chopper finds application in low-power battery-driven vehicles. Same step-up chopper, the principle behind step-up chopper is also used in the regenerative braking of DC motor drives. Again, I repeat, the principle of the step-up chopper is also used in the regenerative braking of DC motor drives. Now in previous slide, you came to know that again was a single quadrant operation. Now let us look into the multi-quadrant operation. Multi-quadrant control of chopper-fed DC motor drives. See, the application of DC motors on electric vehicles and hybrid electric vehicles requires the motors to operate in multi-quadrant. Multi-quadrant why? Because we require forward motoring, we require backward braking, we require forward braking, and we require backward motoring. For vehicles with reverse mechanical gears, two-quadrant operation, which are nothing but forward motoring and forward braking, is required. Forward motoring is nothing but quadrant 1 operation, and forward braking is nothing but quadrant 4 operation. Again, I repeat, forward motoring is quadrant 1 operation where you have torque positive, speed positive. In forward braking, you have speed positive, torque as negative because you want to stall the vehicle. However, for vehicles without reverse mechanical gears, 4-quadrant operation is needed. Multi-quadrant operation of a separately excited DC motor is implemented by controlling the voltage, poles and magnitude through power electronics based chopper. What you are seeing in the figure shows the aspect of two-quadrant aspect of forward motoring and regenerative braking control, using a class C 2-quadrant chopper. Class C 2-quadrant chopper. If you will see from this figure, which is in your right side, you will see that you have two diodes D1 and D2 and two switches S1 and S2 with controls IC1 and IC2. The DC motor armature is connected in shunt to diode D1 and the switch S2. From here, we can see from the chopper circuit, it will be very interesting to know the waveforms. First, if you will see that the control current waveform IC1 for the switch S1, the switch S1 will be on for a period from 0 to delta T. Again, I repeat, IC1 through pulse. The switch S1 will be on from 0 to delta T, and at the same time the switch S2 will be off. When switch S1 is on, the source current path will be flowing, and we will see that the output voltage will be nothing but that the voltage VA, that is the load, will be nothing but the source voltage capital V. And at this point of time, the armature current will be increasing linearly and will be equal to the source current IS. Now we can make use of the diode D2, and then we can see that the armature current and source current both can become positive. Discontinuous conduction is not occurring, irrespective of its frequency of operation. Discontinuous conduction occurs when the armature current falls to 0 and remains there, right, for a finite interval of time. The current may become 0 either during the freewheeling interval or in the energy transfer interval. In this circuit, the freewheeling occurs when the switch S1 is off and the current is flowing through D1. This happens in the interval from del T to capital T, which is also the interval for which the S2 is receiving the control signal IC2. If armature current falls to 0 in the freewheeling period, the back EMF immediately drives a current through S2 in the reverse direction, thereby preventing the armature current from remaining zero for an interval of time, for a finite interval of time. Hence, no discontinuous conduction. Similarly, the energy transfer is present when switch S2 is off and capital D2 is conducting, that is the diode D2 is conducting, which is nothing but the operation which is happening from the interval 0 during the interval 0 to delta T. If the current falls to 0 during this interval, the switch S1 conducts immediately because IC is present, the IC1 is present, and the capital V is greater than the EMF capital E. So what will happen? Armature current will start to flow, and hence again the discontinuous conduction is prevented. What you are seeing in the figure here is nothing but a class E 4-quadrant operation. Class E 4-quadrant operation. How this is happening is we are combining two class C choppers. We are combining two class C choppers, what we saw in our previous slide. Right? In this class E chopper, if switch S2 is kept closed continuously and S1 and S4 are controlled, a 2-quadrant chopper is obtained. What are those 2 quadrants? We will obtain a positive terminal voltage. If we are obtaining a positive terminal voltage, please do be attentive here that if we are obtaining a positive terminal voltage, it means we are obtaining positive speed. And if we are obtaining positive armature current, that means we are obtaining positive torque. So when S2, coming back to our point, when S2 is kept closed continuously and S1 and S4 are controlled, a two quadrant chopper is obtained which provides positive terminal voltage, hence positive speed, and the armature current in either direction, which is positive torque and negative torque. So that means you are getting quadrant 1 and quadrant 4 because omega m speed remains positive. That means the terminal voltage remains positive. Now, how to obtain the other two quadrants? What we will do is, for other two quadrants, that is quadrant 2 and quadrant 3 operation, the switch S3 is kept closed continuously and switch S1 and S4 are controlled. So one gets a two quadrant operation with a supply that can supply a variable negative terminal voltage, and the armature current can be in either direction, that is positive torque or negative torque. This control method has many features. The utilization factor of the switches is low due to asymmetry in the circuit operation. Switches S3 and S2 should remain on for a long period. Again, I repeat that the multi-quadrant control of chopper-fed DC motor drives has certain features. The utilization factor of the switches is low due to the asymmetry in the circuit operation. The switches S3 and S2 should remain on for a longer period of time. Now, when this happens, when this is the demand, this means this may create commutation problems when the switches are using thyristors. The minimum output voltage depends directly on the minimum time for which the switch can be closed, since there is always a restriction on the minimum time for which the switch can be closed, particularly in thyristor choppers. The minimum available output voltage and hence the minimum available motor speed are restricted. To ensure that the switches S1 and S4 or S2 and S3 are not at all on at the same time, some fixed time interval must elapse between the turn off for one switch and the turn on of another switch. This restricts the maximum permissible frequency of operation. It also requires. In next class, we will see induction motor drives, look into the detailed analysis and how they can be used as electric propulsion for electric vehicle and hybrid electric vehicles. Again, these are the books that have been already passed on to you, and these are the books that are being referred in my course for the electric vehicles part. Thank you very much. In case of any queries related to this course, you can email me. Thank you very much.